I analyze a lot of teams, but there's no player I learn more from in every single match than Tayson. Teaming up with Chapix, he's already placed second last season. They won the first FNCS qualifier. They won a Cash Cup. They are truly unstoppable. So let's see why it's so hard to beat Tayson and Chapix. Their drop spot of choice is Loot Lake. Now Tayson lands to the north side usually, whereas Chapix will land to the west. And this drop spot actually gives them access to roughly 23 chests, which is plenty for a full duo. Now the loot choices is very interesting. Tayson always decides to take the Burst AR, whereas Chapix will always have the Hammer AR. Neither of them will run SMGs. You can see in this clip, for example, Tayson dropping it for minis because they want to have triple heals. With the recent changes to Storm Surge, healing is even more important than ever, and because they don't have grapple gloves in their drop spot, taking 3 different healing items is vital to their success. We'll come back to how they actually counter not having grapple gloves later on in the endgame though. So while leaving their drop spot, they notice a fight near the middle of the map. And rather than just pushing in and engaging this, they sneak around on top of a roof trying to third party. Now it helps because there's a supply drop in between them which will pull out some of the players from that fight and will hopefully enable them to get some damage and some tags on them. This doesn't end up happening, however, they just open it and get a purple burst from it, which of course Tayson upgrades from his current green one. They hang around here for a little moment and get an opportunity to get some tags off and notice that fight ends, meaning the players inside are weak. Tayson Chapix uses this as a perfect opportunity to try and get involved in the fight and pick up some easy eliminations. However, once they notice that this fight goes a little slower, the player starts to back off into a bunch of his own builds, meaning it's going to take a lot of time, they instantly disengage, pretty much wasting nothing with this. No materials and no heals either. Whilst rotating to their position in the next zone, they use plenty of materials as they go, and this is because they always end up going to spots that they can re-harvest as they use their materials. Notice the position here to the east of Coney Crossroads, where Tayson ends up sitting in a bush while Chapix will just farm all of the wood back that they've just used. Now this position isn't very good because there's not that much visibility over the rest of the map, so as soon as the second zone pops, they rotate over to a small little hill nearby where they can re-farm the brick and get some better sightlines. Now the way that they build up here is a small surge tower with Chapix 1 layer above Tayson. Now there's multiple reasons that this works. The first one is just everyone has their own angles to aim from with 360-degree vision, and you don't open and edit to a wall where someone else isn't paying attention and get them shot. And I love how safe Tayson plays this. He tags the gas station players, and as soon as the other player looks at him, he resets the wall. He doesn't want to trade surge damage because he doesn't want to waste any of the shields that he has. When that first surge warning appears, they've done 596 damage at this point, just using some of these small little strategies that we've talked about. Now, as the third zone starts to get closer, notice they start scouting and try and understand a rotation path if the zone pulls each direction. Now when the zone pulls south, you can see Chapix is already holding his edit and instantly runs. They've already known exactly where they're going to go as soon as this zone appears. It's all pre-planned. I love the small adjustments they make on rotate. Notice how they slightly go down this hill to cut off line of sight from some of the other players, again saving them more heals. This, in combination with the almost instant rotate, allows them to sprint to the center of the third zone and get a really good position building up on another rock that they can reharvest on top of a hill. This is another great example of them using the power positions on the map. It might not be a massive hill, but just some materials on a small hill is some of the best spots in the mid game. And yet again, they build the same tower here where Chapix is 1 layer above Tayson. The third zone is the first time in the entire game where Tayson actually takes any damage at all, which just shows how good the rotation paths and line of sight manipulation have been. They get good RNG and pull the 4th zone, and all they want to do from this point is just get some tags. Notice how he chooses every shot so carefully. He barely misses any of them, and he's never wasting his ammo by spraying at builds. He's just getting small damage after small damage after small damage. And then they do the same thing yet again for the 5th zone. Notice how just before it appears, they're always scouting, they're figuring out their rotation path in case they get a poor zone. So they always have information of what's going on around them. Now they pull a max distance 5th zone, and the timing they choose to rotate here is critical. When it comes to a 5th zone, most players will rotate as soon as the zone starts to close, which means that basically everyone's going at the same time. Knowing this, Tayson Chapix leave 5 seconds before that, so that they're just slightly ahead of everyone else and can look back if they need to. Yet again, as they make this rotate, more great line of sight adjustments. They hide behind trees and they go behind this big hill that doesn't have any players on it. Now inevitably, they do have to use a bunch of materials on this rotate because it's almost impossible not to. It's a max distance 4th zone. Going into this, they had 140 and 142 builds respectively, and they ended with 85 and 107. Their inventory still have tons of heals and they have plenty of ammo as well, so their early and mid game this entire game has been so solid. And Chapix actually gets a knocked body to pull back into his base, which gets them capped up again. The perfect catalyst to success. Tayson then gets a further elimination down there, which just completely sets them up for endgame. They pull the first moving zone, and they actually have a really great strategy to avoid playing with grapple gloves. So they put a huge effort into tarping to the front side of the first moving zone for about the first half of this. Remember, all of the grapple glove players will be at the back side of the first zone, so when they start to swing forward, because Tayson and Chapix are at the front, they have free tags on nearly all of them. This will shoot them down, stop them rotating, and get them focused by the entire lobby, but also gives them an opportunity to get easy eliminations. Then once the zone catches up, a lot of the other players are scuffed in the rotate and using grapple gloves, so they can just sprint to the front side. I love how they also do this on second height layer, so they just run across the top of everyone's builds because height isn't really doing that much this game. Now once they get to the front side, they can actually loop back and notice that high ground is totally scuffed because there's two teams fighting for it. The way they take height is so good. So because they're at the front side of the zone, they can spray back at the scuffed teams fighting for it at the back side. But there's two really important things they do here. The first one is that they're constantly building away from the team at the back, meaning that if they get chopped, they have nothing to connect to. And the second thing is, they're spraying the teams out. They're not trying to spray the players, they're trying to disconnect the height to make sure they get dropped and then have nothing to connect to. This height retake is extremely successful at the end of the first moving zone. Now the job is just to ensure that they can keep this height for the rest of the game. Now leaving their drop spot, Tayson had a burst AR, whereas Chapix had the hammer AR, so only one of them has spray potential. However, when they got this refresh at 5th zone, Tayson actually switched his burst AR for the hammer AR. This means that both of them now have the ability to spray down below, but there's one big problem, which is ammo. Once Tayson starts to run out from picking up a bunch of eliminations down below, he actually ADSs with his striker pump to ensure he gets maximum damage on the grapple glove players and the players down below. This is a small adjustment, but it does add up. Of course, they need to get the ammo refreshed from the players down below, so they have to drop down for it at some time because they don't have grapple gloves to pick it back up. They don't choose to do this in the first or the second moving, but when it's the third moving zone, the 8th zone, as soon as Tayson gets an elimination at the backside of the zone, he sees there's an opportunity for it and goes down and picks up 400 ammo. Now this is a play that almost guarantees the win this game. Since they had relatively low mats, I really like that they used armored walls to strengthen their floors rather than dropping down and connecting, since again, that would waste valuable builds. Now this game has been, in my eyes, almost a perfect match of Fortnite from start to finish. However, there is a big mistake at the end that almost costs them the entire match. Notice how it's a 2v1 to finish off the match, and Tayson stays on the left side while Chapix is at the front. There appears to be a bit of a lack of communication here because Chapix is chucking chug splashes and healing at the front side, whereas Tayson is trying to go in from the left and unfortunately ends up actually getting knocked. Had they both been pressuring at the same time, this would have been fine, but Chapix was healing, so it appears that there's a bit of a lack of communication here. The actual win moment is unfortunately rather mediocre given the whiff from the other player, but the way they play this game without grapple gloves is so methodical. If you are a grapple glove player or you want to figure out the strategies to use with them, click this video right here on screen to see how Thomas HD and Tripper does these, and of course, subscribe.